My House of Horrors Chapter 731 to 740. Chiume. Come out and play. Quote. The girl downstairs waved her hand vigorously. She had a smile on her face, and she looked very excited, like something good had happened to her. The protagonist didn't reply. The camera froze for a second with an empty and even a little cold expression. Then, the protagonist closed the window. The chill did not disappear after the window was closed. If anything, it lingered around the main character's body. It was unclear how the director managed to film this, but this feeling of oppression alone was better than most horror movies on the market. The crowded room was like a cage. After the window was closed, it felt like cold seawater was rushing in, drowning the main character. The camera moved aimlessly around the room, and suddenly, the girl's voice came from behind him. Chiume. Chiume. Quote. The camera slowly turned around, and a girl's face was pressed against the window. She was using so much force that her facial features were distorted, like she was trying to use her face to crush the glass. Chiume. Come out and play. Quote. The bright red dress was eye-catching. It formed a contrast with the dark sky, but at the same time, it complemented each other. The main character lived on the 4th floor. When she looked out earlier, the girl was clearly standing downstairs. Such a strange scene suddenly appeared, but the main character did not show any reaction like she was used to it. The camera very calmly moved in another direction. Since it was a first-person perspective, the camera actually represented the main character's line of sight. It moved past the messy study table, the dirty clothes that were piled up on the floor, and finally stopped at the bedroom door. Chiume. Come out and play. Quote. There was a girl's face on the glass of the bedroom door. She was pressed against the glass, and the bright red dress dyed the glass red as well. Her breathing became urgent. The main character suddenly grabbed the scissors on the table and raised them. Since it was a first-person perspective, this scene gave the audience the feeling that the scissors were stabbing at them. It was too fast, and the change in movement was too sudden for the audience to react. Pa! The bedroom door was slammed open, and a middle-aged man ran in. He grabbed the main character's hand and snatched the scissors away. What are you doing now? The camera shook, and the world spun. The main character was pushed to the side of the study table. Your mother and I have had it hard enough already. I beg you, please don't torture us anymore, okay? Quote. The audience could not see the female lead's current expression and demeanor, but they could feel the female lead's current state from the middle-aged man's expression. Humans were very magical creatures, and this kind of resonance seemed to have been engraved in the deepest part of the race's bloodline. What happened? The sound of hurried footsteps could be heard, and a middle-aged woman ran into the room. She looked very haggard, and when she saw the female lead, her eyes almost instantly reddened. Without another word, the middle-aged woman squeezed past her husband and hugged the main character. You saw her again. The woman was facing the camera, and the audience knew that she was talking to the main character. From this angle, everyone could clearly see any subtle expression on the mother's face. There was pain, uneasiness, annoyance, but most of all, there was heartache. Without the female lead's reply, the mother already understood. She hugged the female lead tightly. Why did you suffer like this? How can this illness be cured? Quote. The camera moved away from the mother and focused on the sky outside the window. Dark clouds covered the sky, making it hard for people to breathe. The eyes slowly closed, and the theater sank into complete darkness. There was no light at all. The man looked very nervous. His legs were pressed together, and he asked Chen Ge softly, why is there no sound? Is the machine broken? Quote. Before Chen Ge could answer, a strange background music entered their ears. The eye blinked, and it slowly opened. The camera moved, and the main character was still lying in her bedroom. Next to her stood her parents and a strange man. The new man had a hunched back, and he stood with his back to the main character. Since it was a first-person perspective, when the main character could not see him, the audience could not see the man's face. Doctor, what kind of illness does Wenyu have? Why does she keep saying that she can see these strange things? The main character's mother was worried. Yes, doctor, what's wrong with my daughter? I'm not a doctor, but I'm in the field of research. Don't worry, I've understood the basic situation. The tone of the man who was called the doctor sounded familiar to Chen Ge. It was rare to hear a familiar voice in a movie. The doctor signaled for the main character's parents to take a seat. Her condition is very unique, so I'll give you my own opinion. The doctor took out a black notebook from his bag. You should know that humans live in a three-dimensional space, right? The main character's parents shook their heads. They had no idea what the doctor was trying to say. The doctor flipped through the notebook and found a page that he had torn out from one of the books. To put it simply, the three-dimensional space is our human world, and it has three concepts: length, width, and height. The four-dimensional space is based on the three-dimensional space with the addition of the time axis. In reality, the condition that restricts us from entering the four-dimensional space is time. Due to the existence of time, humans in the three-dimensional space can only make one choice in a one-off life, and this choice will be a completely independent choice. In other words, every life experience is an independent three-dimensional world, and all the three-dimensional worlds are arranged on the axis of time. This way, it forms a four-dimensional world. Quote. The doctor's words on the screen were confusing, much less the main character's parents. Even Chen Ge, who was in the audience, was confused. However, the blind man next to him suddenly became quiet and more obedient. But what does this have to do with my daughter's illness? The main character's mother was worried about her daughter, so she did not pay attention to the doctor's words. I'll tell you again, your daughter is not sick. There are many accidents that happen in this world every day, from small things like quantum entanglement to big things like the expansion of the universe. There are many things that we can't explain for now. Doctor, just tell me, how can my daughter's condition be improved or not? What kind of medicine should she take? Even though my family is poor, for her sake, we can do anything. The main character's father cut him off. Their performance was very real, so real that it did not feel like a performance but a recording of the past. Your daughter is not sick, her eyes are an accident. The doctor was still facing away from the camera. The three-dimensional worlds arranged on the axis of time will occasionally overlap, and your daughter Chong Wenyu's eyes are the intersection of the two worlds. That is why she can see things that you can't. The movie was still playing. Chen Ge was just doing a mission, but he was attracted by the plot of the movie. Why did the doctor and the main character's parents call the main character Chong Wenyu? The ghost outside the window is calling Chiume, but why? This doctor's explanation is quite interesting. I'll memorize it. Even though I don't quite understand it, perhaps it will be useful in the future. Quote. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. On screen, the main character's parents did not listen to the doctor seriously. There was disappointment that could not be hidden in their eyes. Trust me, your daughter is really not sick. Her eyes are just an accident. If possible, I wish to bring her to Shanghai City. I will give her a more thorough examination. The man did not appear to be a liar. His tone was sincere, but unfortunately, the main character's parents did not agree with the things that he said. If there is a chance, I will bring her there. For now, Wenyu still needs to go to school. The main character's mother rejected the offer in a roundabout way. The doctor sighed softly. He handed the main character's mother a name card and stood up to leave. Throughout the whole process, the doctor had his back to the main character, so the main character's face could not be seen. After the door closed and the doctor left, the main character's mother grumbled softly, I was wondering why he was willing to treat Wenyu for free. So, he is a liar. When we arrive at Shanghai City, he will come up with various reasons to charge us. I also think this doctor is not reliable. Perhaps he is an imposter, but there has to be a reason for an illness. This has never happened to Wenyu before. How could she fall sick so suddenly? Yes, the child was fine several months ago, but since that night, no, that afternoon after school, she has been acting strangely. The parents were worried, and there was a trace of heartache in their voices. The camera recorded everything coldly. It gave the impression that the main character was looking at the scene before her with indifference. The eyes that were opened slowly closed, and the strange music started again. Different from watching a horror movie at home, the background music came from all directions when watching a horror movie at the cinema. In fact, it would create the impression that footsteps were approaching or that something was circling around you. This horror short was filmed with great care, and that could be seen from the sound effects alone. The background music was mixed with the sound of a heartbeat and heavy breathing. It sounded like someone was having a nightmare after they fell asleep. Deep in the darkness, they struggled, but they could not touch anything. Just as the audience was sucked into the nightmare and held their breath, the crisp sound of a bell came from the background music. Her eyelids fluttered. The main character seemed to have been woken up by the sound of the bell, and she opened her eyes in confusion. The scene reappeared on screen, but it was no longer a bedroom but a rather simple cram school. The glaring sunlight shone through the window and onto the female lead's body. The camera captured the female lead's shadow on the ground. She lay on the table in the last row of the cram school classroom, feeling drowsy. We're already a third of the way through the movie, and I only see the shadow of the main character. This director is really a genius. Chen Ge has seen many shadows. From his professional point of view, the shadow in the movie could not be any more ordinary. Quote, "The sunlight made her dizzy. She could hear the sound of an electric fan turning, the sound of books being flipped, and the singing of a classmate's low-quality headphones. A long shot showed everything in the classroom. The director, cameraman, and actors cooperated seamlessly. Bang! While the audience was immersed in the atmosphere created by the director, the silence was suddenly broken. The door was forcefully pushed open, and a girl with an exaggerated hairstyle walked in. He Chiume. Behave yourself, don't affect other students. A man with glasses and a crew cut followed closely behind the girl. He held a phone in one hand and a textbook in the other. The man should be the teacher of the cram school, and he seemed to be familiar with the new student. Okay. The girl with red hair was still chewing on her gum, and her words were unclear. The teacher already knew the girl's personality. He scratched his head in annoyance and then wiped away the sweat on his face. He clapped his hands lightly. I'm sorry to interrupt everyone, but this new student is called Hichiume. Due to her family's special situation, she took a year off from school. She joined our class to catch up, and I hope everyone can help her. The teacher gave the girl a brief introduction and then had her sit at the last row of the cram school. Coincidentally, she was sitting next to the main character, and she became the main character's desk mate. The camera focused on Hichiume at a close distance. The girl had light red hair. She leaned against the wall of the last row and tossed her school bag on the table. What are you looking at? The girl noticed that the main character was looking at her, and she pouted. Her personality was like a flame. It was not that her personality was bad, but she would accidentally hurt others. After being scolded by the girl, the camera immediately moved. Moments later, the camera that represented the main character's gaze landed on the girl again. Obviously, the protagonist was curious about her new deskmate. When the bell rang, the teacher walked out of the classroom. The main character was about to stand up when Chiume suddenly stood up. She angrily slammed the book on the table, then spat out the chewing gum in her mouth and looked at the main character. Fierce eyes, violent temper. Just when the audience thought that she was a bad girl, ready to bully the female lead. The girl named Chiume said, "Did you understand what old Sao said just now? Why am I completely confused?" Quote. The heroine shook her head lightly, and the audience heard the heroine's voice for the first time. I just fell asleep. You look gentle and quiet, how can you be a bad student? This won't do. Chiume looked around. To her disappointment, there did not seem to be a single reliable student in this shabby class. The exam is coming soon. If I fail this year, I'll have to repeat the year again. When the F***ck will I graduate? Do you want to graduate that badly? No one wants to grow up, but I can't be a child anymore. Even if I explain it to you, you won't understand. In any case, I have to graduate this year. Chiume shoved all the books into her bag and then picked up her notebook to read. This serious attitude was completely different from her appearance and personality, but the actor's performance did not feel out of place at all. The students left the classroom one by one. The more Chiume read, the more annoyed she became. In the end, she slammed the notebook on the table again, as if slamming it a few more times would shatter the knowledge, making it easier to absorb. Oh well, I'll start studying tomorrow. After Chiume packed up, she walked out of the classroom alone. The camera focused on Chiume's back, and then it followed Chiume out of the classroom. Mr. Sao, considering that we've been neighbors for so many years, can you please help me? An old woman's voice came from the corner of the corridor. The camera moved down, and an old lady with white hair could be seen grabbing Mr. Sao's arm. She tried to shove a basket covered in black cloth toward Mr. Sao. My body is getting worse. I don't know when Chiume's father will be released. If I leave, what will happen to her? If this continues, I'm afraid she'll end up like her father. Quote. Auntie He, please keep the basket. I'll try my best to teach Chiume, but studying is not something that I can do alone. I can't promise you anything, but I can promise you that I'll try my best to teach her. Mr. Sao did not take the old lady's basket. Thank you, Mr. Sao. The old lady left after thanking her. Mr. Sao walked up the stairs with a frown. The main character tried to act normal, but when she straightened her body, she bumped into something behind her. The camera turned back, and Chiume's face was reflected in their eyes. This scene reminded them of the opening scene of the movie. What's the point of eavesdropping? Chiume said coldly. That's my grandmother. She's a stubborn old woman. She seems to treat you very well. Good my *SS. Communicating with her takes a lot of effort. Let me tell you, I have a lot of connections. I wanted to drop out of school and find a job to support her and me, but she wouldn't agree no matter what. She wanted me to graduate. I had no choice but to come back to school because of her. Chiume took out the mirror to look at her own face. She was not bad looking, but she was rather hostile. The moment Chiume took out the mirror, the camera immediately retreated. It gave the impression that the main character was afraid that she would look into the mirror. What are you doing? Chiume noticed the main character's strange reaction. This is weird. I'm telling you, don't tell anyone that my grandmother has come to school. Okay, the main character paused before continuing. You want to graduate as soon as possible so that you can find a job and take care of your grandmother. Putting the mirror away, Chiume leaned closer to the camera and pushed the main character away lightly. What I want to do is none of your business. The only thing you can control is your own mouth. Chiume grabbed her bag and walked down the stairs. When they brushed past each other, the main character whispered softly, "You won't be able to take care of her. She's going to die soon." What are you mumbling about? Chiume did not hear it clearly, but she did not care what the main character said. The camera focused on Chiume's back as she walked away. Then the main character's voice came again. You won't be able to take care of her. My left eye can see everything. The camera moved away from Chiume to focus on the old lady with the vegetable basket. The light from the setting sun fell on the old lady. As she walked away, the camera focused on half of her shadow. Seeing this, Chen Ge could not sit still. He had no idea how the director had managed to film this. Deskmate had been filmed a long time ago, and at the time, the special effects were not that advanced, but this scene in the movie could not have been more realistic. Could it be that this is not a real movie? Shadows had a special meaning to life, or at least that was what Chen Ge believed. The main character's left eye can see the abnormality of living people's shadows. Wait. When the camera first started, did the main character's parents have shadows? Quote. The earlier movie flashed across Chen Ge's mind. The main character's parents, including the doctor, did not have shadows, but that could be due to the bad weather. At the start of the movie, the sky was covered with dark clouds. There was no sun, so it was normal that there was no shadow. After Chiume and the old lady left, the main character returned to her own home. She took out the key to open the door. Wenyu, why are you home so late today? Wenyu's mother rushed out from the kitchen. The expression that she gave Wenyu was filled with heartache and a strange emotion that could not be described. It was different from a normal parent's emotion. This was something that Chen Ge had not noticed until now. The main character did not answer. Once she stepped into the house, she completely lost her vitality. Even her breathing became uncomfortable. Pushing open the door to her bedroom, the main character ran into it. This child, I've asked around. Our daughter might be sick. The main character's father put down the newspaper and pointed at his head. He lowered his voice. I've already contacted the doctor. I'll bring him here this weekend to take a look at our daughter. How much will it cost? The most important thing now is to get the doctor. You wouldn't want our daughter to be unhappy, right? Her parents' voices came from outside the door, but the main character ignored them. The camera that represented the main character's line of sight moved from her parents to the ceiling. Then the screen turned black, and the main character closed her eyes again. This movie appears to be a recording of something, but if everything is real, the timeline does not seem to match up. Chen Ge touched the blind man's shoulder. What do you think? I can't see anything. If you're done, let's hurry up and leave. I don't want to stay here for another minute. Brother, you don't sound like a bad person. Please let me go and stop tormenting me. Blind's back was already drenched in sweat. He kept his eyes closed, but just by listening to the voice, he was already scared out of his wits. The movie is already halfway through. It'll be over soon. Bear with it a little longer. Chen Ge looked at the screen, and the colors brightened. This part was also recorded from the main character's perspective, and it mainly described the small things that happened between her and Chiume. The female lead was taciturn and rarely opened her mouth. If she could avoid speaking, she would. Chiume's personality was the exact opposite of the female lead's. She was carefree and didn't take anything to heart. She was impulsive and didn't care about the consequences, but perhaps it was because of this drive that her relationship with the female lead kept getting closer. These two people with such a huge difference in personality ended up becoming friends. To everyone's surprise, both of their grades kept improving, and this was something that even Mr. Cao did not expect. He was just trying to appease her, but he did not expect the two girls with the worst grades in the cram school to have such a strange reaction when they became deskmates. The screen brightened, and the overall style of the movie changed completely. It was supposed to be a horror movie, but it gave Chen Ge the feeling that he was watching a youthful inspirational film. This director is not bad to be able to control so many different styles. Chen Ge made a rough estimation of the movie's progress. 4/5 of the movie had already passed. Other than the ghost at the beginning, for the rest of the movie, there was not even a scarier point, much less a ghost. A horror movie without a ghost? The horror movies on the market always had an unknown, and this unknown would create a sense of suspense and horror for the audience. However, this movie appeared to be an exception. The whole movie was shot from the female lead's perspective, and she did not see anything that was truly scary. Chen Ge had a feeling that the director was waiting for something big. He knew that this movie was not that simple. As the movie reached its end, he had a feeling that the real scary thing was about to appear. The relationship between Chiume and the female lead improved, but there was one strange thing that was worth paying attention to. During the time that Chiume and the female lead were friends, Chiume's laughter could be heard multiple times in the movie, but the female lead's laughter had not been heard even once. There was still some time until the graduation exam, and with Chiume's current results, graduating successfully should not be a problem. She had found her best friend and was about to complete the promise with her grandmother, so this should be the happiest moment in Chiume's life. However, while Chiume was happy, the audience could see the anxiety hidden behind the happiness from the female lead's perspective. Chiume's grandmother's shadow grew shorter and shorter, and the worry on the female lead's parents' faces grew heavier. The speed at which the camera changed became faster and faster, like the main character was blinking her eyes. Underneath the peaceful life was a giant whirlpool, and those who got close to it would be pulled into the deep sea. After the graduation exam was over, there was a class reunion. Chiume and the main character returned home very late. The night was exceptionally quiet, and Chiume hummed a pop song. Her biggest wish for the past few months had been fulfilled, and she was in a very good mood. Deskmate, why haven't you said anything? We can finally relax. We don't have to look at Cao's face every day anymore. Chiume hugged the main character's shoulders and leaned in close. The camera studied Chiume from a close distance. The girl had dyed her hair back to black, and she looked very pretty. The main character looked at her for a while before moving her eyes away. She had her head lowered, and the camera focused on the dark road that appeared to have no end. You look unhappy. Chiyume's face squeezed into the camera again. The main character stared at Chiyume quietly. She did not say anything as she continued to walk forward alone. Is it because of your family? I don't think I've heard you mention them before. Chiyume chased after her. Actually, my family is quite annoying as well. The person who gave birth to me was arrested, and it was my grandmother who raised me, so I took on her surname. The main character did not stop. Chiyume followed behind her until they reached a junction. Chiyume's home was on the left, and the main character's home was on the right. This was where they always parted. What's wrong with you today? The main character did not stop. After crossing the road, she told Chiyume silently, actually, that is not my name. Not your name? Chiyume wanted to ask more, but the main character had already started to move forward. Chiyume's unique environment when she was young created a personality that was different from other girls her age. She did not go home but chased after the main character. She followed behind the main character, calling her name. The lights on both sides dwindled. Finally, the two girls stopped before an old apartment building. This building was located in an inconspicuous corner of the city. It was dark, and it did not appear like there was anyone living there. Your home, is here? There was still no answer. The main character ran up the stairs and took out the key. Chiyume followed behind her. There were no lights installed in the corridor. Chiyume stumbled and tripped several times. The door opened, and the main character walked into the room. The lights in the living room were not on, and the curtains were closed. It was completely shrouded in darkness. But under these circumstances, in the camera, the door to the kitchen opened, and the main character's mother walked out. Why did you come home so late today? A familiar voice, a familiar scene, and a familiar figure standing in the dark. It was the main character's mother. The scene that looked normal during the day actually gave people an indescribable feeling of horror when it reappeared in the darkness at night. I will not return here in the future. The main character's voice changed. This time, she did not hide in the bedroom but stopped in the living room. Who are you talking to? Chiyume stood at the door. Looking at the dark living room, her face was pale. The scene in her eyes was completely different from what the main character saw. This place is so old. The furniture is broken, and the floor is filled with cracks. What are you doing here? You'd better go home. Go home? The main character grabbed Chiyume's hand lightly and then yanked her into the room. But, we're already home. The light on the screen dimmed until it was completely dark. The director did not capture what happened in the room, probably because he did not know either. Screams echoed in the dark. The eyes flew open, and the main character was still lying on the bed in her bedroom. The camera moved to the window. The sky was dark, and it felt oppressive. This scene was reconnected to the beginning of the movie. It was the same sky, and it felt like everything that happened earlier was just a nightmare. The main character glanced at the clock on the table and took out her phone to reply to a message. Then she dragged her tired body into the bathroom. She kept her head lowered, so the camera only focused on the ground. After brushing her teeth and washing her face, the phone suddenly vibrated. The camera moved. The main character took out her phone from her shirt pocket and answered the call. How about we go to the movies tonight? To celebrate how you've finally gotten rid of that ruffian. Chiyume is not a ruffian, and she has never bullied me. It's because you're too kind that Sao had you sit next to her. Do you know that both her parents have been sent to prison for their crimes? Now that she's gone missing, who knows what she's up to? In any case, you'd better stay away from her. Okay, I understand. The main character gripped the phone tighter. By the way, deskmate, after the movie tonight, do you mind coming to my house? I want to treat you to something fun. Sure, no problem. Okay, that's a promise. After hanging up, the main character slowly raised her head. The camera moved to the mirror. This was the first time that the audience had seen the main character's face in the whole movie. A thin body, unkempt clothes, long black hair, and a face that was sewn together from many women. These women looked different, but they all had the same left eye. The left eye gave off the feeling of a long nail that pierced into the many faces. The camera paused on the mirror before the main character, and it felt like the main character was studying her own face. The ending song started, and the camera that represented the main character's perspective stopped before the mirror. The woman in the mirror slowly reached out her hand. She touched the face in the mirror and then moved her body closer to the mirror. The screen was completely occupied by the woman in the mirror, and the audience could see it more clearly. As the main character's hair parted to the side, the woman in the mirror revealed her left eye. When her left eye slowly widened, the camera suddenly pulled back. The camera did not appear to be the main character's perspective anymore. The camera kept retreating, and it captured the main character's back as well as the woman in the mirror. As the camera pulled back, the main character who stood before the mirror turned around to look at the camera. Her face was as white as paper, completely different from her reflection in the mirror. At that moment, the scariest scene appeared. The main character turned around, but the woman in the mirror maintained her original posture. Both she and the main character looked at the camera, and a strange expression appeared on their faces. The music stopped, and the screen went dark. Probably because this theater had not been used for a long time. After the movie ended, the lights in the theater were not turned on, and the surroundings were still dark. The darkness made people feel uneasy. Chen Ge did not move from his seat, and his eyes were still glued to the screen. He had a general understanding of this movie. The movie used interludes, and the ending echoed each other while the middle was a memory. The left eye was growing on a girl called Wenyu, but the girl who was controlling Wenyu's body was no longer Wenyu herself. The director only chose one of the moments. At the beginning of the movie, the female ghost kept calling the main character Chiume. This meant that at that moment, the soul inside the main character's body had already become Chiume. The parents and the doctor that were shown later were all ghosts, or rather, they existed in a world that could only be seen by the left eye. This also explained why Wenyu had been so cold toward her parents. In reality, they were not her family but the ghosts of Wenyu's family. The middle part of the movie was Chiume's memory. It told the story of how she changed from Chiume to Wenyu. After the flashback ended, the movie returned to reality. Chiume and her friend had agreed to watch a movie together that night. After the movie, she would invite her friend to her home, and a new cycle was about to begin. The nightmare was not broken. The next girl who took over Chiume's control of Wenyu's left eye should be Chiume's friend. The scariest ghost in the movie was the female lead. This was the only horror movie that Chen Ge had ever seen that was shot from the perspective of a ghost. In addition, there was another part of the movie that made Chen Ge terrified. When the movie was about to end, the camera angle changed. From a first-person perspective to a third-person perspective, there was no one else in the room at the time. Could the final scene have been shot from the audience's perspective? Both the female lead and the ghost in the mirror turned to look at the audience outside the screen. Chen Ge remembered very clearly that their left eyes were open. It felt like they would crawl out from the screen at any moment. Even Chen Ge had a creepy feeling in his heart after watching this movie. It was not that scary, but the more he thought about it, the scarier it became. Opening his backpack, Chen Ge released the white cat. He patted the cat's head, and he finally calmed down. The horror of the movie is created by the director. This is different from the ghost stories in real life. If there's a chance, I'll have to communicate with the director. The screen had been dark for almost 3 minutes, but the black phone did not send the mission completion notification. Chen Ge had no idea what the problem was. Is it because the movie is too short, and the black phone doesn't approve of it? He stood up and stared at the dark screen. A different possibility came to mind. Is it possible that the movie is not over yet? The movie was only 20 minutes long, but if the ghost in the movie escaped, then the movie was not over yet. There was a faded smell of mold in the theater. Looking around, the seats looked like low tombs, and the closer he looked, the scarier it became. The girl with the left eye is probably hiding somewhere inside the theater. Chen Ge was there to complete the black phone's mission. If the movie was not over, then his mission would never be completed. Do I really have to wait here until the sun comes up? Chen Ge was a very level-headed person. He knew his strengths and knew his weaknesses. Zhang Ya was asleep, and it was unknown when she would wake up. Xu Yin stayed at the haunted house and had the red high heels clear the curse as soon as possible. Currently, Chen Ge's strongest employee was Bai Cholan. With Xu Yin's help, Bai had consumed Shang Qing's heart and become a half-red specter, but he was one of those specters who had been forcefully promoted to half-red specter. In a real fight, he would not be as strong as those half-red specters who were full of resentment. The left eye looks very powerful. If she suddenly appears from somewhere, the white cat and I will not be able to handle her. Chen Ge had always been careful. Unless absolutely necessary, he would not do anything risky. Brother, there's been no sound for so long. The movie should be over by now, right? Can I leave now? The blind man raised his head to ask Chen Ge. You've already called me brother, so of course, I won't trick you. To tell you the truth, the female ghost from the movie has escaped. The ghost from the movie has escaped? The blind man's reaction was rather intense. Don't worry, I have good news and bad news to tell you. Chen Ge reached into his backpack and flipped through the comic. What time is it? You still have the mood to joke around. The blind man curled up in the chair. It was obvious that he was really afraid. Why don't you tell me the bad news first? The bad news is that the female ghost is very dangerous. She seems to be looking for a body double, and we were unlucky enough to run into her. Chen Ge analyzed calmly. I was forced into this. Okay, brother, let's not stay here anymore. Can we leave now? If not for the fact that he could not win, the blind man would have grabbed the cane to fight with Chen Ge already. It's already too late to leave now. The eye has seen the two of us, and she will definitely come after us. Fine. The blind man slumped weakly in the chair. Then what is your so-called good news? The sound of pages flipping echoed in his ears, and Chen Ge called out the names one by one. The good news is, I've called many friends over. We have the advantage in numbers. A faded stench of rotting flesh drifted out from the theater, and it even covered up the moldy smell from earlier. Do you smell something? Something's coming, the blind man screamed in shock. Stay in your seat and don't move. Be careful not to bump into other people. Chen Ge had already flipped to the last page of the comic. Your friends are here? When did they arrive? Are they already inside the house? How come I didn't hear the door open? No one answered the blind man's question. If he opened his eyes then, he would have fainted from the shock. The originally dark and deserted private theater was now packed with people. The boy called Foul Odor was pushed to the corner by the hanging mannequin, and he hugged his stomach. The students in the last classroom at Muyang High School jogged back and forth with smiles on their faces. Lao Zhou tricked Duan Yu to the last row with a serious expression, and the two of them sat together. Elder Wei and a few doctors stood behind the blind man. They discussed the possibility of surgery, and occasionally, professional terms would come out of their mouths. The water ghost sat in the first row. She was a victim of many things. This was the first time in her human life that she had entered a movie theater, so she was curious about everything. She wished she could crawl into the screen to take a look. Yan Danian was the last to come out from the comic. He sat in the corner unwillingly. The pen spirit hugged Xiao Xiao and moved closer to him. Chen Yao Lin seemed to want to ask him about comics. Today is my birthday, so I'll treat everyone to a movie. This is one of our employee benefits. This theater is quite small, so I hope you won't mind. When I have money in the future, I'll book out an IMAX theater for everyone. Chen Ge stood up and walked into the theater. Bai Cholan and Elder Wei followed closely behind him. The blind man sat alone in his seat. He knew there were many things around him, but there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Opening his mouth, he reached out to touch Chen Ge's seat. After realizing there was no one there, he obediently shut his mouth. He did not dare move, and he did not dare ask, "Is there any movie that you want to watch?" Chen Ge opened the playlist. He was there to complete the mission, but the other employees were different, especially the students from Muyang High School. They could only leave their possessions for a short period of time, so they made use of the time to play. For a normal person, this was a normal movie, but for these children, if not for Chen Ge, they would not have had this chance. There were only a few horror movies on the playlist, but the employees erupted in a heated discussion. In the end, they voted for the movie that they wanted to watch. The movie was called The Name, and it seemed to be a movie related to a person's name. Chen Ge looked at the cover. The director was still Chen Ge, and the main character looked 80% similar to Wenyu. Alright, go back to your seats. Don't wander around after the movie starts. Also, pay attention to your surroundings. This theater has been haunted before. Looking at the ghosts in the theater, Chen Ge did not know whether it was appropriate for him to say that or not. A bunch of ghosts sitting inside a theater to watch a horror movie. I wonder if they'll feel like this is a documentary? The employees listened to Chen Ge. They returned to their seats, and they were kind enough to leave 2 empty seats in the middle. Why are there 2 empty seats? Chen Ge pressed the play button, and the background music came from all around the theater. It circled around his ears, creating a feeling of being in the movie. Even though this theater was quite old, the equipment was the best. After all, it was meant to serve the visitors of the resort. Once the music and the pictures appeared, some of the employees who had not seen much of the market or had passed away earlier became excited. The theater was filled with wails and screams. The sound they made was scarier than the sound effects of the movie itself. What if I scare them later? They've always been the ones scaring others. Chen Ge did not care anymore. He just wanted to finish the mission on the black phone. Sitting in the seat that the employees had specially left open for him, Chen Ge had Bai Cholan sit next to him, and the blind man sat on the other side. The blind man had come here because of him, so he had to go back to ensure the blind man's safety. Brother, are you back? With Chen Ge's support, the blind man sat in the middle of the theater. His legs were weak, and it felt like he was walking on cotton. Yes, it's fine now. You're very safe now, don't worry. Chen Ge hugged the white cat. You can watch the movie in peace. After this movie is over, I'll personally send you out. Are you sure I'm safe? My heart is racing, and I suddenly feel so cold like I've been shoved into a fridge. The blind man hugged the cane, and his eyelids kept twitching like he was about to lose control and might open at any moment. You're imagining things. Chen Ge gave a simple answer. He scratched the white cat's chin, leaned against the back of the chair, and started to watch the movie comfortably. That's impossible. It's not a hallucination. Are you sure all your friends are here? How come it feels even scarier than before? The blind man exhaled a cold breath. Brother, are you even listening to me? Don't you feel uncomfortable at all? Not only am I not uncomfortable, I even feel like ordering a takeout with popcorn and Coke. Chen Ge had indeed thought of that earlier. Since he was out with his employees, he had to enjoy himself to the fullest. However, considering the delivery man's mental endurance, he gave up on that thought. It's just a psychological effect. Just relax and you'll be fine. The movie officially started, but the atmosphere was completely different from before. The lighting and sound effects did not change much. The only thing that changed was the audience. Chen Ge was engrossed in the movie. He tried to connect the information that he had found on the internet about Left Oculus with the movie that he had watched that night, and he had a rough idea of what was going on. The movie Left Oculus had been burned to the ground, but the private theater had preserved the other works of director Chen Ge. All of these works revolved around Left Oculus. Why would the director keep focusing on Left Oculus? A scene from Deskmate flashed across Chen Ge's mind. Wenyu's father had called Wenyu by her full name, and the girl's name was Chong Wenyu, the same surname as Chong Ge. Could the girl with the left eye be Chonggu's sister or sister? In Deskmate, in Wenyu's home, she could see her parents and the occasional doctor, but Chong Ge was nowhere to be found. If Chong Ge was really Chong Wenyu's family, then that could indirectly explain why Chong Ge did not die during the movie. He just did not show up due to various reasons. Chen Ge was suddenly reminded of the last scene from Deskmate. With the change of perspective, could Chiume and the ghost in the mirror be looking at Chong Ge instead of the audience? The name officially started to play. Different from Deskmate, this movie was shot from a normal third-person's perspective. The difference between the two movies was huge. Just from the beginning, it did not look like they were written by the same director. Deskmate started with a gloomy sky, a home that felt like a prison, and a monster that could appear at any moment. The beginning of the name was very warm. A cup of coffee was placed on the table, and next to it was a notebook and a bunch of review materials. The camera slowly moved forward before stopping on the notebook. There was a name written in red, Chiume. This time, the main character has changed to Chiume. Chen Ge knew that there was a connection between these few movies. His previous assumption was that each movie recorded a host for the left oculus, but reality was different from his speculation. When you. Quote. There was a knock on the door. A middle-aged woman called Wenyu's name, and the woman's voice was different from Wenyu's mother's. The person outside the door is not Wenyu's mother, but why would she call out Wenyu's name? The camera turned. The woman who was playing on her phone on the bed immediately stood up when she heard the call. She ran to the table, shoved the diary into the drawer, and locked it. After that, she went to open the door. What are you doing in the room alone? Why are you so slow every time I call you? The camera panned to the woman outside the door. She was very fat, probably heavier than two Wenyus combined. She had heavy makeup on, and there was a smell of cigarette smoke on her. I heard from the boss that you've resigned. Yes, Sister Fang, I have something to deal with. The woman raised her head, and the camera caught her face. The actress was very pretty, and she looked 80% similar to Wenyu from Deskmate. She was like an elegant white flower, but after staring at her for a long time, something did not feel right. The thing you're talking about is going back to school. Studying at night. Sister Fang squeezed into the room impolitely. It's so hard to find a job these days. You have such a good opportunity, why don't you cherish it? Sister Fang, thank you for taking care of me during this period. I'll treat you to dinner another day. Wenyu hated it when other people entered her room. Don't change the date. Sister Fang held Wenyu's hand lightly. I introduced you to my nephew last time. How did you feel? The boy really likes you, you could say it was love at first sight, don't push me. Hey, open the door. Quote. The door closed, and Sister Fang nagged for a long time in the corridor before she left. Sister Fang mumbled, Sister Fang, and, Sister Fang. Fang, Sister Fang, 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 Sister Fang. Fang, she said, Fang, Fang Ocle Fang, Fang, Fang. Ju, Fang Fang, and Fang. Ji Ju Ju Ju. There were a few replies. Fang. Thank you for the invitation. I'm currently in the Philippines, and I just got off the plane. I graduated from the International School of Aeronautics and Astronautics, but I suggest that you do not study at Zhejiang's Night University. There are too many things to do, and it's not very useful. If you have the ability, you'd better spend some money and go to a more formal private university in Xinhai City. Chen Ge Adult Education, thank you for the invitation. If the op wishes to know more about adult education, please click on my profile picture. Chen Ge Adult Education is the most professional adult university in Zhejiang. It can help you enter the elite circle, learn management knowledge, and explore new business opportunities. Non-existent person. There are so many night universities in Zhejiang, but you chose the most unreliable one. Let me give you a piece of advice. You can apply to any night university, but do not go to Juju Private University. Quote. Under the third comment, there was a conversation between Wenyu and non-existent person. Why can't I go to Juju Private University? Doesn't this school give out a graduation certificate? Quote. Of course it will, but it depends on whether you can survive until graduation or not. Where did you see this school from? Based on what I know, this school is about to close down. Quote. I have a student ID from this school, and my name is written on it. I should have studied at this school before. Impossible, non-existent person, it's true. It's true. I'm not lying to you. I can't remember what I saw at that school, but I know that after I left that school, my left eye started to see many unforgettable things. Quote. I don't have time to listen to your stories. I'm going to hide. I'm not making up stories. Are you there? Are you still there? Quote. Fine, looks like you're really gone. I'm telling the truth. After I left that school, my life changed completely. That school was the beginning of my change, and now I want to return to that school to find out the truth. Quote. Non-existent man, is it important what the truth is? You're still here. If you're not lying, then I wouldn't advise you to go to that school. Why? The non-existent man, do you know that the school has another name? What name? It's also called the School of the Afterlife. Seeing this, Chen Ge stood up. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the screen. School of the Afterlife. The name was printed in his eyes. Before he came, Chen Ge did not expect the name of the School of the Afterlife to appear in his left eye's mission. He knew the meaning of the name. The School of the Afterlife represented a 4-star scenario, a baleful specter beyond a red specter. The left eye was brought out by Chong Wenyu from the School of the Afterlife. Why would she have a student ID from the School of the Afterlife? Quote. The left eye grew on Wenyu's body, but the soul that controlled Wenyu's body had changed one after another. The real Wenyu had disappeared a long time ago, and no one knew where she had gone. Based on the movie, the School of the Afterlife is a private university. When Wenyu obtained the left eye, she was still a minor, so how did she get into the School of the Afterlife? If she accidentally entered the school, how did she get out? Quote. Initially, Chen Ge had been watching the movie with the mentality of completing a mission, but when the School of the Afterlife appeared, his attitude changed. It shouldn't be a simple coincidence. Just the change to the left eye created a 2-star scenario, so how scary must the whole School of the Afterlife be? Chen Ge thought back to the introduction on the black phone. There were 9 prerequisites, and one of them even included Zhang Ya. The deadline is almost here. Perhaps this movie will give me the information I need. Chen Ge continued to watch the movie, and on the screen, the phone on the table suddenly vibrated. There was an incoming call, and the name on the caller ID was weird. It was called the non-existent person. In the movie, the phone vibrated. Chiume, who was arranging the documents, turned to pick it up. She answered the call without looking at the caller ID. Hello, who is this? We were just chatting. I saw the message on your homepage, and since you left your phone number, I wanted to give it a try. A male voice came from the other end of the phone. The person was young, and his voice was probably going through puberty. Just now, Chiume glanced at the phone screen. You're that non-existent person. That is my online username. Why would you give yourself a name like that? It doesn't matter what name I give myself. The important thing is that I can call you. The boy purposely lowered his voice like that would make him sound more mature and mysterious. The phone number that I left is real. Is it that surprising that you can call me? Have you called other girls before and been tricked by them? And you were tricked by him. When you did not think much of the man's words. I'm using the dead person's phone to talk to you. Now that you can call me, at least part of what you said is true. Your method of verification is quite strange. Wenyu's attitude turned colder. She did not panic from what the boy said. Tell me, why are you looking for me? I just want to save your life. I'm afraid that you'll die. The boy was young, but he appeared to be very experienced. Die. You've escaped from that place after so much trouble, so why do you want to go back? I know you can't remember many things, but have you considered that perhaps your memory is the price you have to pay to escape? The boy tried to persuade her. To escape, you even gave up your memory, but to search for your lost memory, you've returned. Is there anything stupider in the world than that? I'm not going back to search for my memory. I'm going to that school to search for someone. Wenyu opened the locked drawer and looked at the notebook inside. Wenyu is this body's name, but it is not my name. Her finger slid across the cover of the notebook and skimmed over the name Chiume. No matter why you're going back, I don't suggest you go back. Remember, do not go back. Quote. The sound of something heavy being dragged came from the other side of the phone. After the sound was heard, the boy hurriedly hung up the phone. I know that place is very dangerous, but some things cannot be avoided. The main character placed the documents on the bedside table and then hugged her phone as she lay on the bed. She tried to contact the non-existent person again, but the other party did not give her any response. Information about this school can be found on the internet. Although it is a private school and founded by a private individual, looking at the attached pictures on the internet, its scale is no less than that of a regular college. The building area is even larger than that of a regular college. Wenyu had made up her mind to go to this school. She took out a pen and paper and recorded all the information she found on her phone. Some of the pictures didn't have their watermarks removed, so they might have been stolen. There are also some pictures, but why do they look so weird? Perhaps it was a problem with the camera angle or the building itself, but in some of the pictures, regardless of whether it was day or night outside, the room was always gloomy. The woman switched off the main bedroom light and only switched on the bedside lamp. Then she lay on the bed and started to record. Looking at the woman on the screen, Chen Ge was reminded of himself. Before he started a mission, he would often collect information like Wenyu. This ghost story is fated to be with me. Time ticked by, and Wenyu, who lay on the bed, slowly drifted off to sleep. The pen slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. It rolled until it reached the bathroom door. After working for a whole day and studying and finding a school at night, Wenyu was probably too tired and slept like a log. The camera pulled back and focused on Wenyu's sleeping posture. It was hard to tell what the director was trying to convey. He used a 10-second long shot to focus on the sleeping Wenyu alone. Chen Ge's employees rarely watched movies, so they all stared at the screen curiously. They were very focused on the film, trying to keep up with the director's pace, trying to understand the director's intention. I admit that the woman is very pretty when she's asleep, but isn't this shot a bit too long? Bai Cholan held it in for a long time before giving his own evaluation. When she opens her eyes, there's a sense of resentment around her, but strangely enough, after she closes her eyes, the resentment disappears. This director is very good. I've seen his previous short. Not a single frame is wasted, so this long shot should be for something else. Chen Ge waited patiently, and after a while, he suddenly made a discovery. Look at the bottom left corner of the screen. Yes, it's the spot where the pen in the main character's hand fell. Quote. The bathroom door was open, and the pen was leaning against the door. The only light in the room came from the bedside lamp. Due to the angle, the bathroom was not completely dark, and a weak ray of light fell on the bathroom mirror. The movie looked like it was still, and the main character was sleeping alone, but after watching it for a long time, one would feel uncomfortable. The main reason was that the movie was not completely still. Something was moving inside the bathroom at the corner of the screen. The picture on the screen looked very warm. The soft yellow light, the soft bed, the cozy little home, and a beautiful sleeping girl. However, once one's gaze moved to the corner of the screen and saw the scene inside the bathroom, the difference would make one's hair stand on end. Inside the dimly lit bathroom, a woman in a red dress stood before the mirror. She twisted her neck, and she kept staring at the camera. The face was hidden in the dark. When the audience accidentally saw it, they would feel like the face was looking at them through the screen. I knew there was something wrong. No matter what kind of skin this movie was wearing, it was still a horror movie. The ballpoint pen on the ground started to roll for no reason. The woman inside the bathroom had disappeared, but from the bathroom mirror, one could occasionally see a woman in a red dress walking around the room. About 4/5 of the screen did not change much, the only thing that changed was the mirror inside the bathroom. The rental was not big. There was no living room, and the bedroom was next to the kitchen and bathroom. At that moment, the main picture was still warm, but occasionally there would be strange noises. The pen rolled on the ground, the geckos on the wall crawled away, and the bedside lamp reflected a shadow, but the shadow did not belong to the owner of the room. The documents on the table were flipped, and the lock on the drawer shook lightly like someone was trying to open the drawer. Moments later, everything returned to normal, and then the scariest scene appeared. The pillow on the bed collapsed like someone had crawled to the main character's side. Under the dim light, two shadows were reflected on the wall, but there was only one person in the room. Her hair was spread out, and the sheets on both sides of Wenyu's body sunk in like something was pressing down on her. Chiume, Chiume, Chiume. Wenyu, who was sleeping, suddenly woke up. She gasped for air and looked around blankly. The weak light from the bedside lamp lit up the room, and it gave off a strange sense of warmth. Most of the furniture in the room was arranged normally, and no one had entered. The worst thing in the world than having a nightmare is waking up after a nightmare to realize that you've just fallen asleep and there's still a long way to go. Wenyu picked up the documents from the bed and looked around. Where did I drop the pen? She stood up and walked to the other side of the bed to pick up the pen. Then, she placed the pen and the documents into the compartment of her backpack. I'll go back to sleep. When the sun comes up, I'll go take a look at the school. Returning to bed, Wenyu switched off the bedside lamp. Just as the room was plunged into darkness, the camera caught a woman in a red dress standing before the mirror in the bathroom. When the light went off, she walked out from the bathroom again. She was still in the room, but the room was completely dark, and no one could see her. This movie has a very creative way of portraying ghosts. Perhaps my haunted house can learn from it and bring a new experience to the visitors through the contrast. Chen Ge hoped to find the director. He felt like if he worked together with the director, the layout of the haunted house would reach new heights. The movie screen was almost completely black. Nothing could be seen, but it left the audience with plenty of room for imagination. Everyone knew that in the darkness, other than a sleeping woman, there was also a ghost in a red outfit. The whole scene was shot in one take. There were no cuts, and it gave the audience a very realistic feeling. Several seconds later, the scene ended, and the sun came up. The arrangement of the things in the room was normal, and the main character did not notice anything. It was like what the audience saw last night was really just a nightmare. I'm sweating for the main character. Lao Zhou patted his chest lightly. You can sweat. Duan Yu rolled her eyes at him. If you don't believe me, you can touch my palm. Lao Zhou stretched out his hand in front of Duan Yu, but she seemed to see through his clumsy trick and slapped his hand away. The employees were engrossed in the story, and only Chen Ge was thinking about things outside of the plot. He had watched the movie, Deskmate, before. Now that he looked at Deskmate and Name in tandem, he realized many problems. The female lead of both movies are called Wenyu, so they should revolve around her left eye. The difference is that the female lead of Deskmate is still underage, while the female lead of Name is already working. They are two different stages of life for the same person. According to the introduction of left oculus in Deskmate, Wenyu's body should have swapped the souls of a few girls, but there are many details in Name that are different from Deskmate. At the start of the movie, Chiume's name was written on the main character's notebook. Earlier, when the ghost appeared and leaned on the main character, she called out Chiume's name as well. Now, the soul trapped inside Wenyu's body appears to still be Chiume. At the end of Deskmate, Chiume had called her new deskmate and invited her to her home. Theoretically speaking, that should have started a new cycle. But after watching Name, Chen Ge realized things were not that simple. Chiume doesn't seem to have continued to look for a replacement. She has been enduring everything that the left eye has brought her alone for so many years. The few movies that revolved around the left eye, on the surface, the main character was Wenyu, but in reality, the main character was Chiume, who controlled Wenyu's body. The body was Wenyu's, but the soul was Chiume's. Chen Ge had only watched the beginning of the movie, but he had discovered this from the details. He was not a smart person, but he had a pair of eyes that could see through the surface. The movie continued to play. The room was clean after dawn, but who would have thought there was a ghost living inside the bathroom? The main character quit her job. When a new day arrived, she did not go to work. Instead, she carried a backpack that was filled with information and took the bus to Western Zhejiang according to the address that she had found online. This is Zhejiang Private University. She searched from morning until noon. Wenyu finally stopped before a hospital. I was looking for the school, so why did I follow the address on the internet and end up at the entrance of a hospital? The surrounding buildings looked quite old. Even though Wenyu was from Zhejiang, she did not know that there was a hospital like this in Zhejiang. Is anyone there? Wenyu tried to open the door of the hospital, but to her surprise, she realized that the door was locked from the inside. She leaned against the glass and looked into the hospital. The floor was clean, the chairs were spotless, and the walls were clean. Other than the abnormal silence, it was not that different from other hospitals. This hospital doesn't even have a name. I can't even look it up online. Wenyu walked to the side of the hospital and saw a man wearing a white coat and a mask walking out from the back door. Doctor, can you do me a favor? Wenyu ran over in a hurry. When the doctor heard Wenyu's voice, he did not stop but walked even faster. Doctor. Wenyu thought this was weird, so she ran over to stop the man. The man in the white coat was getting impatient. He was about to turn away when he seemed to realize something. His body froze where he was, and he stared at Wenyu blankly. The man was 1.8 meters tall, handsome, and well-proportioned. However, there was a shadow between his brows, and his eyes were cold. He had a presence that told people to stay away from him. Wenyu felt uncomfortable being stared at like this. After a long time, she said, "Hello, I'm here to sign up for Zhejiang Private University. I've brought the relevant documents, but I can't find the school's location. The address on the internet is right here. Zhejiang Private University." The doctor stared at Wenyu's face. "That school has already been closed down. You'd better go and sign up for another school." The doctor was about to leave when Wenyu scratched her head and called out hesitantly, "Wait a minute, have we met somewhere before?" The doctor acted like he did not hear her and continued to walk forward with his head lowered. "I am very familiar with this face of yours. I must have seen you before." Wenyu chased after him. "What is your name?" Being chased by Wenyu, the doctor finally stopped, and the camera gave him a close-up. With a frown, the doctor stared at Chong Wenyu and whispered, "My name is Chong Ji-yu." Hearing the name Chong Ji-yu, Chen Ge perked up and studied the man closely. The director's name is also Chong Ji-yu. This is something he has experienced before. Looking at the man's face on screen, Chen Ge scratched his chin. He made himself look cold and handsome. "I have a new understanding of him now." After staring at the face for a long time, Chen Ge felt it was rather familiar. He suddenly turned to look at the blind man sitting next to him. There was a big difference in their height and physique, but the lingering yin energy between their brows was very similar. The facial features were similar as well. The same person. The Chong Ji-yu on screen was tall and handsome, and he had a great presence, but the blind man sitting next to Chen Ge was old and ugly. His body was thin like he was suffering from a serious illness. The internet says that Chong Ji-yu has disappeared. He might have been killed in the fire, or he might have been trapped inside the movie. Chen Ge thought back to the information that he had found online, and his eyes stopped on the blind man's tightly closed eyes. Could it be that he was the one who spread the information? Is he trying to escape from the public's view? Quote. Hugging the white cat, Chen Ge thought quietly. Whether the blind man was Chong Ji-yu or not, he did not panic. He had already booked this private theater. The Chong Ji-yu on screen was cold and handsome, completely different from the blind man sitting next to Chen Ge. If not for Chen Ge's meticulous observation, he would not have noticed the connection between the two. The movie continued. Wenyu chased after Chong Ji-yu relentlessly. It was unclear whether it was a woman's instinct or something else, but she had a feeling that Chong Ji-yu was someone very important to her. In contrast, Chong Ji-yu purposely avoided Chong Wenyu, but from his various actions, it was clear that the man did not hate Wenyu. The way he looked at Chong Wenyu was very strange. Most of the time, it was as if he was looking at a stranger, but occasionally, he would show a rare trace of gentleness. Both parties stood at the entrance of the hospital and chatted. Before they could say much, footsteps came from the back door of the hospital. A slightly plump middle-aged man ran out. Seeing that person come out, Chong Ji-yu took off his white coat, threw it aside, and hurriedly ran into the alley. No matter how hard Wenyu shouted, he did not turn around. Did you see a tall and skinny man running over? The middle-aged man ran out from the back door of the hospital and immediately saw the white coat on the ground. What happened? That person is a thief and a repeat offender. He often comes to our hospital. The middle-aged man gritted his teeth in anger. Thief. He isn't a doctor. Wenyu looked at the white coat in the man's hand in surprise. No matter what he says, don't believe it. That guy is a thief, a liar, and his brain is not normal. You'd better stay away from him. After saying that, the middle-aged man prepared to go back. Wait a minute. Wenyu hurriedly stopped the doctor. I'm here to apply for the adult school. Have you heard of Zhejiang Private University? The address that I found on the internet is this place. Quote. This place used to be a school, but it has been abandoned a long time ago. The flyer that you saw was from several years ago, right? The middle-aged man was not a bad person, and he answered Wenyu's question enthusiastically. Abandoned. Then, do you know why it was abandoned? Wenyu finally found a reliable person, so she quickly asked. I'm not too sure. You can continue to walk toward Yongling Mountain. At the time, Zhejiang Private University was divided into two campuses, the normal campus and the night school. The middle-aged doctor did not hide anything and told her everything he knew. The normal campus is reserved for the new graduates. Our hospital was built from a part of the normal campus, so it is no different from a normal university. Opening the adult night school was something the hospital had no other choice. Zhejiang is only so big, and the number of students is limited. Students from other places rarely come here to study at a private university that does not have much of an advantage. Due to the lack of students, many places are empty, so the hospital decided to open the night school. Quote, "The night school is next to the normal campus, close to Yongling Mountain. The night school of Zhejiang Private University mainly recruits adults who want to improve their education and students who drop out of school but want to return to school. There is no gap between the normal campus and the night school, but the difference is obvious. If you walk toward Yongling Mountain, you should be able to feel it." After the middle-aged doctor said that, he walked into the shadows that the sun did not reach. I do not know the details, but it should be in the hospital's archive room. Currently, the hospital is quite empty, so I can bring you there to take a look. You can bring me to the archive room. When you looked at the empty hospital, it was very clean and very quiet, like there was no one there. Okay. Before she could say the word okay, when you suddenly covered her left eye. Just then, her left eye felt like it had been stabbed. This had not happened for a long time. I'm sorry, but I'm not feeling too well. I'll go again if there's a chance, but thank you. When you covered her eye and thanked the doctor. It's nothing. The doctor smiled and returned to the hospital. There are so many good people in this world. When you looked at the narrow street, she had no idea what was going on with this place. There was not a single person in the middle of the day. It was as if the residents who originally lived here would purposely avoid this place. The night school is just ahead, but the doctor did not tell me the exact location. Looks like I'll have to keep walking. When you walked down the street with some suspicion. After she entered the alley, someone suddenly called her name from the corner. Don't walk any further. You won't find the school. Chen Ge leaned against the wall at the corner of the alley. Earlier, the middle-aged doctor had told Wenyu that Chen Ge was a madman and liar. Now that she saw Chen Ge appear, she did not dare get too close to him. After all, the man before her did not look as trustworthy as the middle-aged doctor, and the things that Chen Ge had done were very suspicious. Seeing the change in Wenyu's attitude toward him, Chen Ge narrowed his eyes and walked toward her. The thing that ran out from the hospital earlier, did it say something to you? That thing? Seeing Chen Ge walk over, Wenyu took a step back. He said, "You're a thief." Would you rather believe a ghost or a person? Chen Ge stood before Wenyu. His facial features were slightly similar to Wenyu's. Ghost? Yes. A ghost that can move around in the day. Chen Ge cornered Wenyu. Did he tell you that I'm a thief, a liar, and a madman? Wenyu felt that the current Chen Ge was quite scary, so she nodded. Did he invite you into the hospital? Wenyu thought about it. The doctor did invite her into the archive room. Thankfully, you didn't go in. If you did, you probably wouldn't be able to come out in this lifetime. Chen Ge handed a medical record to Wenyu. On it was the middle-aged doctor's black and white picture. Chen Ge told Wenyu a very scary story. The doctor did not lie to Wenyu, but there were two important pieces of information that he did not tell her. First, the hospital had been closed several weeks ago, and no one knew the reason for that. To the surprise of the surrounding residents, even after the hospital was closed, people could still be seen moving around inside the hospital no matter whether it was day or night. Second, there was something wrong with the doctor. He was different from normal ghosts. He was an existence that could move around in the day and was not that afraid of sunlight. Chen Ge did not specify what a doctor was in the story. He only told Wenyu that the people and objects that could hurt her left eye mostly came from Zhejiang Private University. The separation of the night school and normal school that the doctor mentioned was true, but the way to enter the abandoned school was not to continue walking deeper into Yongling Mountain. Chen Ge appeared to be being chased by someone. At this point, he left in a hurry and only left behind a phone number. He said that if the person wanted to find Zhejiang Private University, She could call this number at night. At this point in the movie, there was a temporary pause on the screen. When it recovered, the sky inside the screen had completely darkened. Someone edited out a part of the movie, or did the people in the movie not want me to see what happened in the middle? In the darkness, Wenyu held her phone and carried her backpack as she searched the alleyway. The place that she finally stopped at was the hospital that she had visited in the morning. She dialed a number and hung up immediately after saying 3 words, "I'm here." 10 minutes later, a window on the left side of the hospital was pushed open from the inside. A tall and thin doctor in a white coat waved at Wenyu. After Wenyu jumped into the hospital, the doctor had her change into a nurse's outfit inside the cupboard and then led her out of the room. The scene before her was very strange, and it was very similar to director Chen Ge's style. The hospital was bustling with people. Some were registering, some were waiting for medicine, and some were wearing plaster. Everything was like a normal hospital. The only difference was that the hospital did not have any lights on. All the activities of the patients and the doctors were carried out in the dark. The darkness did not seem to affect them that much. It was like they did not live in this world. The moving figures in the dark were just reflections of another world. "Come here." The doctor brought Wenyu into the operating room and locked the door. "Now can you tell me the real way to get into that school?" Wenyu took off her mask and took a deep breath. The male doctor also took off his mask. This tall and thin man was Chen Ge. He grabbed Wenyu's arm and walked to the operating table. The operating table in front of him was different from a normal operating table. He did not know what kind of surgery it was used for. There is only one way to solve the problem from the root, and that is, Chen Ge picked up the sharp scalpel on the tray to dig out Wenyu's left eye and find a new owner for it. Chen Ge's voice was a bit scary. Wenyu took a few steps back, and her body accidentally bumped into the operating table. "You want to gouge out my eyes? They are Wenyu's eyes, but you are not Wenyu. You are just a victim trapped inside her body. I will return your freedom back to you, but I need you to cooperate with me fully." The doctor was right. "You really are a madman." Wenyu grabbed her bag and walked out. "Move, I am leaving." "Even though you have seen the shadows outside, you still do not believe me? I believe you have a clearer picture of the shadows moving normally in the dark than I do. You should have been. You are not me, so how would you know what I can see?" Wenyu wanted to walk toward the door, but she was stopped by Chen Ge. "I am not you, but I know the real owner of this body. I am Chang Wenyu's big brother." Hearing Chen Ge say that, Wenyu stopped moving. She stared at Chen Ge for a long time before she said, "But I have never seen Wenyu's big brother at her home." Wenyu was basically admitting that she was not Wenyu. "Your left eye can only see dead people, and only dead people would appear inside that house. I managed to escape before Wenyu went crazy." Chen Ge was agitated. Just as he was about to reveal the truth, the picture suddenly stopped. At 3:00 in the morning, watching a horror movie in a pitch-black private theater and having the scene suddenly cut off halfway should have been a very scary thing, but at this time, no one in the theater felt afraid. "What's going on? Is this okay, manager? This is a movie theater, not an internet cafe near our Muyang High School. Calm down." What happened after that? The employees discussed among themselves, but there was one person who acted strangely, and that was the blind man who sat next to Chen Ge. The theater was filled with ghostly wails and wolf-like howls as sinister winds blew in all directions. Yet Blind maintained his posture with his head lowered as if he was asleep. After waiting for a full 3 minutes, the movie returned to normal. However, the scene in the movie had changed again, and the quality of the picture was a little clearer. It felt as if part of another movie had been cut out of one movie. There is no one inside the theater, but the movie has changed on its own. The person hiding inside the theater has probably sensed the threat and is purposely trying to hide something. The more the person tried to hide, the deeper Chen Ge wanted to dig. From his perspective, only by knowing the root of the problem would he be able to find the root and help the person. The movie changed to a villa. Wenyu was lying on the dining table. Her face was wrapped in gauze, and it covered her left eye. A man with a slight hunchback stood next to the dining table. His face was also covered in gauze, and it also covered his left eye. The man looked at Wenyu quietly. Several seconds later, Wenyu's eye that was covered in gauze started to bleed. The white gauze was slowly soaked by the blood, and it looked like a red flower blooming inside the eye socket. It's been the second week since I replaced my eye. Why is it still not working? We're biological siblings, and our blood types are the same, so why is there such a strong rejection reaction? The man became more agitated. Whenever blood leaked out from Wenyu's eye socket, the gauze on his face would be soaked in blood as well. It was like his eye was responding to something. There were many nerves in the eye, and the pain was excruciating. The man's body was shaking, and his hands gripped the edge of the table tightly. It's more painful than yesterday, and the wound doesn't show any sign of healing. What's the problem? Quote, he opened the cupboard in the living room, and it was filled with various medical supplies. As the man moved, Wenyu lay motionless on the table like she had lost her soul.